We are rolling, and we're back. Baschamania 235, back-to-back with Penn State guys. Not on purpose. Chenzo is going to come on, kind of a Penn State guy, but Chenzo is going to come on earlier in the week to talk about taking the position at the UNC, and then that kind of got delayed, so now we're doing this one. And, Nick, we didn't know when we were doing this because we had talked Saturday morning, and you said, let's do it when Penn State makes the news official. And then first thing Monday morning, Penn State makes the news official. You're in London, which, by the way, how is London so far?
Dude, it's really beautiful. I just spent the entire day in Salisbury, actually. Was about an hour and a half train ride. So I've been outside all day. My allergies are assaulting me. But yeah, it's been awesome. I'll be here for one more day. Both my brothers just graduated from Penn State with their degrees. So we decided to take a little trip, and we've been planning it for a little while. So I'm enjoying myself.
I was going to ask you when you planned this because they're having an Olympic camp right now in Colorado Springs. And I'm like, well, wait, if he made the team, what was he going to do? Just like cancel the trip or not go to the camp? But
well, so we have a pretty darn good training situation at Penn State. So, maybe we miss.
Yeah, you can miss one. So, all right, you have had such an interesting couple of months. I want to, obviously news broke this week that you are the newest coach at Penn State, replacing Jimmy Kennedy. So I want to dive into that, but before we do, I don't think we've talked publicly about Pan-Ams, Olympic trials, so let's dive into some of that. Going back to Pan-Ams, you win the Pan-Am championships, and then you're going to the Olympic qualifier to try to qualify the weight for the Olympics. First of all, what went into the decision? I know we're kind of like going, feels like years ago in wrestling time, but the decision to go back-to-back with going to Pan-Ams and the Olympic qualifier, which I think you stayed in like a post-hurricane hotel for like 2 weeks down there.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but I think, just discussing with the Team USA coaching staff, I think, that was something that we all kind of lean towards, just in terms of the seeding and stuff for the qualifier. So, in retrospect, I don't think I would have done the same thing, but at the time, that's what we were working with, and so we went down there with a good attitude and did our best.
Crazy turn of events at the Olympic qualifier. You run into Austin Gomez, and it's so interesting because NIL is kind of dominating the wrestling's changing conversation. But we're also, there's another conversation of Americans wrestling for other countries. And you've had it for a couple of years, but it's starting to be where there's better and better guys. And now we're starting to see this turn where it's like, there's kind of been this thing of like, well, it's okay until they beat one of our guys. Then what happens? So I'm curious what it was like for you wrestling Gomez, who is competing for Mexico. He'll be going to the Olympics, and he had to go to the last chance, or the Pan Am Olympic qualifier, to qualify himself for Olympics. What was that like going against another American there?
It's interesting because whenever you think about being on Team USA, you don't necessarily think you're going to wrestle other Americans, but that's just the way it is. Our wrestling in the United States has gotten so good, and our depth has gotten so deep that that's just the kind of thing that's happening. So I definitely see the benefits for guys that do it, and I understand why other guys don't do it. So I think it's just something that we should be prepared for more in the future, especially looking at the Western Hemisphere. The United States kind of dominates it. And so, you're seeing more and more guys wrestle for countries like Canada, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Bahamas, like countries all over. So I think it's just something that's going to continue. And, something that I actually observed is there's a couple guys that are wrestling for countries out there that probably wouldn't get the chance to wrestle internationally if they didn't. So, like I said, I think there's definitely pros to it. And maybe there's a chance for those countries to be represented at certain things where otherwise they wouldn't have a chance. So, there's definitely pros and cons. I can see, why American fans don't like it, but that's just the way it is right now.
I think it's mixed too right now, because there's definitely the like, well, Gomez just beat Nick, and now the U.S. has to go qualify, which, by the way, it all worked out. Spencer went and qualified, Zain went and qualified, so it all worked out. But it does seem to be a very mixed reaction and response, where it's like, I've seen, being close to Roman, I've seen a lot of his feedback more than some of the others, and there's a lot of people who are like, man, congrats, Roman, go chase your dreams. And then there's like that small percentage, I feel like, of haters. But for the most part, I think, I know for me too, my perspective changes a bit when you see somebody you care about do it, because you see more firsthand, like watching Roman go and become an Olympian. I think that definitely changes your perspective a little bit, where it's like, oh, you know what, this is kind of cool. Like now he's an Olympian, he can go to Paris. So,
well, as we know, you could go on the internet and say that the sky's blue, and someone is going to argue with you, right? So I think that's just the case in competitive endeavors. Is you're gonna have people that kind of hate on what you're doing, and you're also gonna maintain your supporters. So
yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of people who listen to this podcast and get mad that I talk. They get mad that I talk on my podcast. So
hey, they're still listening. They're still listening though.
I know. So all right. So after Pan-Ams, we run into the Olympic trials, where you had exciting wins over Pantelio 9-2 and Alira's 11-9, who, by the way, in my pre-show, I picked you to come out of the top half, and my comments and mentions on Twitter were flooded by people so high on Andrew Alira's, and I kind of went back afterwards, and I'm like, man, was I a little bit, obvious? People know my bias. It's not a secret. So I'm like, man, did my bias get the best of me there? But that match lived up to the hype. Like, that was a super exciting match. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good wrestler, right? He's young for one, and he hasn't competed very much, relatively or relative to other people in college, and so he's coming with a lot of energy and a lot of talent. Obviously, I have a little bit more experience at the senior level, so maybe that was the difference. But that's a fun match, and I'll tell you, I had the biggest smile on my face because I ran out for that match, and like for the first time in 3 years, I get a big crowd cheering for me. It was sweet. So that's one of the advantages of having the Olympic trials at the Bryce Jordan Center. It was awesome.
Dude, my heart was so conflicted with some of those experiences. It's like the Nolf Burrows one. Like, Burrows is my guy. Nolf is my guy. And I was telling Nolf, I'm like, man, if you're not beating Burrows, that moment isn't that moment. But to do that in that home arena, it's so crazy. And speaking of the NLWC Pop, one of the coolest things, I don't know if it came across on TV, because I was in the arena for that one. You, at the end, I kind of missed what was happening. I think it was being challenged, and you were just kind of standing in the middle, and you were watching the end of Zain's match. And your excitement for Zain winning was one of the most purest forms of friendship, where it's like, these guys are competing, and I have to beat one of those guys to go to the Olympics. But here you are just thinking about Zain. What was that like to, like, genuinely not be thinking of yourself? You're just excited for Zain and his win there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a personal perspective, ever since I came to Penn State, it was like 8 years ago now, Zain's been my guy. So it's just, I love to see him win. It's seeing one of my brothers win. It's awesome. So, and then on the other side of that, there's the team aspect where, in that moment, we know that, NLWC just locked up another spot on the Olympic team. So it's just fun to win as a program. Winning as an individual is a lot of fun, but one thing that I've picked up, over my time at Penn State is winning as a program is like, for me, it's even better.
Yeah. A lot of people say that. I remember when I had Reese Humphrey on here, great interview with him. He was saying like winning yourself is so fun, but being in the corner and like coaching guys to win and winning as a team, there's so much to that.
Yeah. And luckily we've had a lot of both.
Yeah, no, for sure. What was your thoughts heading into both matches with him?
Yeah, so we've wrestled a lot over the years. We wrestled at the Olympic trials 3 years back, and then we wrestle in the room, obviously. So, um, and I think he's just a tough son of a gun, right? He's probably the toughest opponent I have out there other than myself. So, and just the familiarity of that match too, and it's whenever Zain and I wrestle, I think some people commented that it's boring. It's like, well, yeah, we know exactly what each other is going to
Right.
do, right? So I think, after losing that first match, going into the second one, okay, I need to open up a little bit and change it up. And, didn't work out for me there. But, uh, it's tough whenever you got two guys competing for the same spot. But that's, a fortunate problem to have at the Nitty Line Wrestling Club.
Yeah, and to that effect, I had Aaron Brooks on, which great episode. Go back and listen to that if you're new around here. Aaron Brooks talked about what it's like being an Olympian, all that good stuff. So go listen. But a lot of the takeaway from that was you saw people respond like, "Oh, hey, it seems like there's a little bit of beef between Aaron and David." And there was a lot of offline conversations I had with people. I'm like, I'm kind of surprised that like you at the NLWC, you've got you, Zain, Nolf Dake, Brooks, David, and it's you see a little bit of each. You see the I'm so happy for my teammate. You see where maybe there's a little bit of bad blood. For you, what has it been like where you do have that dynamic where you have a training partner you really care about, and you know that like, okay, when you go to the Olympics, lose you don't, but that's also my guy.
Yeah, well, just for an example, we have multiple guys every year that are competing for the same starting spot, right? And so as a coach, and then up until now as an NLWC athlete, you're helping all these guys improve. So we're not holding back anything from anybody. We're helping everybody, and it's a very supportive room. And so whenever you have two guys that are competing against each other, that's just the way it is. But like I said, that's a fortunate problem that we have at Penn State, is that we have multiple guys competing for multiple Olympic team spots, right? So I think it's just one of those things that's bound to happen when you're in the premier wrestling program in the world. So yeah, it's I wouldn't say there's bad blood or anything. I think maybe some people will take away things from other people's comments that maybe isn't there, but everyone can judge for themselves. I'm here to tell people that um, we have a very supportive and positive program, which I don't think anybody can deny, especially if you spent like 5 minutes in our wrestling room. And it's a place where people come to achieve their goals. And at the end of the day, at one weight class, one guy is going to be the guy, and you saw that with me and Zain. You saw that with Dave and Aaron. Saw that with Nolf and Kyle, right? That's just the way it is in our sport, and it's fun and interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, one thing that I tweeted out right after was it shows a lot of character that you were going with Zain to try and qualify the weight, be his training partner to do literally exactly what you've been training so hard to do. And
Yeah,
someone like responded right away with like, it doesn't show character, that's his job. No, it's really
yeah,
not. And I wanted you to kind of share some insight on that. USA Wrestling shared a great interview with Cody, who, man, Cody and Casey are two people I want to have on this podcast so bad. And I've talked to them both about it, and the timing just hasn't worked out. But when they talk, you should go listen. If Casey does
yeah.
any kind of interview, go listen. If Cody does an interview, go listen. And he did just a quick, USA Wrestling behind the scenes interview at the arena. But he had mentioned that he called you to see if you wanted to go with Zain. What was that like? When did that happen? Where it's like, man, you're dealing with the Olympic trials loss, and right away you have this decision where, obviously Zain wants you with him to try to qualify and get him ready for that weight. What was that like?
Sure. Well, quick shout out to Jordan Conaway, who also went as a training partner. He's like everyone asks like what the secret sauce is at Penn State. It might be Jordan Conaway. So I'm not kidding about that. That dude is something else, and he's on another technical level. Especially whenever you get into folk style wrestling. But yeah, I mean, Coach Cody called me and asked if I wanted to go, and it would be a training partner, and also because it's an important tournament to try to qualify the weight, as a potential alternate should anything happen to Zain, right? And it was difficult, right? You come off of it was initially difficult, is what I'll say. You come off of a loss, and that's a spot that I wanted, and then they're asking, hey, we got to leave in a week and a half. Do you want to come to Turkey for a week to help Zain qualify the weight? And then after about 2 seconds, it was a really easy decision because of course I want to go. Like I don't want anyone else to go with Zain, right? I'm
Right.
I know I'm the best guy to help him out achieve his goals, and I want to be there for it. So yeah, I mean, it was at first you're like, go all the way to Turkey, but very easy decision at the end of the day because there's no one else I would rather have there with Zain other than myself and Coach Cody
Yeah.
and Jordan Conaway and Jake Varner. So we had a good crew.
So I'm assuming the conversation had to be like Monday, Tuesday, right? Because it had to be.
It was, we had to know. So we wrestled on, what was it, Saturday?
Saturday, yeah.
And then he called me at like 12:05 on Sunday, and he's like, "Hey, like we had to know 5 minutes ago. We had to know 5 minutes ago, whether you're not you're coming or not." So, yeah, it was pretty quick.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how we were talking about, and we're going to talk about from a coaching standpoint in a minute, but you're not shy with your faith, and you're constantly sharing scriptures, which
Sure.
I love, by the way. How much does your faith play into these decisions? I want to talk about the coaching decision specifically in a minute, but these things, if you look at just the last, just over a month, decision to go with Zain, decision to accept a coaching position. These are pretty big decisions. Traveling around the world, changing plans and goals. Like, how much has your faith played into it when you're making all these decisions and having kind of these ups and downs of, you have 2 great wins at the Olympic trials, then you have 2 losses. Then you have a decision to go to Turkey, then, excitement with Zain winning, then you come home and you got all this coaching stuff. How much has your faith played into all of that?
I mean, the biggest role, right? I think that, as people, we always have, different ambitions and things that we want to do, which is like, that's fine. And then, whenever you have big decisions, there's a lot of questions and you doubt, and, there's 2 different paths, sometimes more. And so it can be difficult. And I think that's just the nature of life. But I find that, in prayer and trying to align, your actions with God's will for us, I think that ends up making decisions a lot easier. And what I find is that the path is generally laid out for you whenever the time comes. So I think that, and once again, just understanding what God's will for us, we're meant to be servants to each other and to His will. And I think that whenever you keep that in mind and act according to Christ, I think it makes things a lot easier because it takes some of the things that we worry about that we probably shouldn't out of the equation. So it's not easy. It's not supposed to be whenever big decisions come around. But I think that, um, like I said, through prayer and just focusing on God's will rather than our own, it becomes a little easier. But it's never going to be super easy, I would say.
No, it's always, I mean, you're taking leaps of faith and you're stepping out and saying, okay, God, I think this is what you're calling me to do. But still,
Yeah.
you have to make these decisions and kind of take them in faith. Going back to Zain,
and if you do, sorry,
no,
if
go
you
ahead.
do make a decision and sometimes you're at a road and it's like either decision looks like it could be the wrong decision. So you just make a decision and you do the best that you can. And then, that's, there's no one way through life. So I think just doing your best with whatever you got is probably the most important thing.
100%. The paralysis of analysis is real, and that will cripple a
Mhm.
lot of people. Going back real quick, as I think about the highs and lows in this roller coaster, Zain at The Last Chance, winning 2 great matches, looking awesome, and then dropping that match to Tumir Ochir. What was your guys' thoughts backstage, like not knowing if he'd even wrestle, where now he's got to be pulled back into repechage the next day? What were you kind of thinking as you kind of waited to see what his fate would be? And then what was that next day like of just him going on that absolute tear winning
Sure.
4 straight to qualify?
Yeah, crazy. Well, after he lost, right, we go back to our hotel to get his weight down because um, I, I was completely confident that that Mongolian would make it through on that
100%.
side. I mean, he's really good and maybe a world champion if he doesn't have that singlet pull call at the World Championships. Um, and if anyone's not familiar with that, just go back and look at the World Championships in Serbia. It was kind of a weird call, but really good. So I was confident that that guy was going to make it through. I don't know how Zain was feeling. I don't know how Cody was feeling, but I was pretty confident. So, my words to Zain are like, all right, let's go get our weight down because we're wrestling tomorrow. So, and that was the focus. And then, he made it through, made weight the next day, and dude, 4 good matches, 4 good opponents, and Zain might be the toughest dude in the world. Like it was crazy. And I do not act well whenever my guys are competing.
Same.
I'm a nervous wreck. I don't usually watch, but in that situation, I have no choice. So I'm like watching and biting my fingers off. Like it was rough. So, but like Zayn was on a mission, and nothing was getting in his way. And he went back to college and was just throwing legs in and turning guys. It was sweet. I mean, those guys
Yeah.
those guys learned something about Zayn that day.
They did. It's so awesome to see Zayn be Zayn, and I think it's another testament to the coaching there, where it's like, maybe he won't even wrestle, maybe he'll go up to 74, and then it's like, no, we got a plan for you to go 65, and now he's an Olympian. So super cool. All right, so you guys are over there qualifying the weight.
Yeah.
And a whirlwind of stuff is going on behind the scenes ever since the Olympic trials. All of a sudden, murmurs slowly come out. David Taylor, possibly Oklahoma State, newest head coach. And then it finally breaks, and it's out there. So there's 2 things. First, were you guys hearing murmurs, and were you kind of hearing, like, he might go take this job? Like, what was it like in Penn State as all this is going down? And it's interesting to me because, like I told you earlier, I don't think this impacted anybody in Penn State as much as you, because you ended up getting a job as a direct result of all this going on.
Yeah, I think that some people are probably familiar. I'm embarrassed. I barely pay attention to like what's going on in the wrestling world, like who's taking what job, and so I was just like I had no idea what was going on, and we're in Turkey getting Zayn ready, so it's like we're only half paying attention, and we're a couple hours behind, and so it's just it was just kind of weird. So I think there were probably some murmurs. Obviously, whenever the job opened up, they're looking for a Penn State guy, right? That's who you want to go hire right now is Penn State wrestlers, and I think it'll be that way for a long time. So yeah, I mean, this stuff happens fast.
And so, for those maybe not familiar or whatever, David Taylor goes and takes the head coaching position. He brings Jimmy Kennedy and Thomas Gilman with him. And Jimmy Kennedy was the assistant coach, or one of the assistant coaches at Penn State. And that job became available. And your name got thrown out there a lot. Zayn's name got thrown out there a lot. For you, how did that job kind of come about? It's funny because I know how Cal can be, and I could see it being a very informal, casual line in a sauna. I could also see it being a very serious conversation. Like, what was that like when that job was offered to you, and what was your initial reaction?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have a bunch of guys I think that could have stepped into that position pretty quick, and obviously a position that I think that Kale wanted to fill pretty quick, right? Because we have guys competing all the time. We got guys competing at U20s and U23s here soon. So, it's not something that you want to leave empty for too long. But yeah, I mean, he just asked me if I would want to fill that position, and I said there's nothing else I would rather do. So I, I wrestle here and I help the guys out already. So it's kind of natural for me to want to continue to help them, in an official position. So yeah, it was a pretty short, casual conversation. And I'm sure that they don't just fill that position as an afterthought, though. I don't want to give that impression. I mean, I think they're very deliberate about who they're gonna pick for that coaching spot. So, yeah.
And it's funny because when we were talking not too long ago, you had mentioned, you wanting to study for the LSTAT and different things you want to do. You have the company, the apparel business, Wakina. You have all these things going on. Was coaching even on your radar before this?
I think so. I think I was kind of at, a junction where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. Thankfully, I had a lot of options, available to me. Um, but like I said, I think just the path is laid out for you sometimes, and this was, the best path that I think could have presented itself for me. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's
Yeah.
that's just the way it goes. And yeah, I mean, I never thought about coaching officially necessarily. I guess I'd considered it like any NCAA wrestler does, but it's just it would be very hard for me to coach somewhere that's not Penn State. So yeah, I don't know.
When you look at Penn State's insane success over the past decade, one of, if not the greatest dynasties in all of college sports right now,
Yeah,
what motivates you to take a job like this? Obviously you say like, okay, I wouldn't go coach anywhere else. I'm Penn State through and through. It's an interesting position though, when, a lot of times you see a coaching hire in wrestling and it's like, man, I want to build this program up. I want to get back to winning. I want to get this program great like it used to be, whatever the case may be. You're in an interesting position where it's like Penn State is at the top. They're the best of the best. And you're coming in to essentially help them just continue dominating. Where's the motivation? Like, where's your head at kind of as like the excitement for the position?
sure. Well, I mean, like I said, I think helping guys achieve their goals was something I was already doing before, even while I was competing. And so, it's easy for me to continue to do that in an official role. And yeah, as a program, our motivation, we just love what we do. I mean, it's awesome to come into the office and the room each day and just and continue to try to achieve our goals and help others achieve their goals. It's fun. I mean, it's hard for me to not smile thinking about it. Um, and if you look at the record of the coaching staff that we have and that I'm added to now, that's what we've been doing. If you look at like since 2011, um, we've had the most NCAA champions by far. We have 34. You'd have to add up the next four schools on that list to reach us, right? Since
Crazy.
2000, it's insane. So, if you want to be an NCAA champion, if you want to achieve your goals, Penn State's where you come, and you're going to love doing it every day. Um, Kale mentioned this in his last interview, and I'd like to mention it as well. I think something that is unique about our program is that everyone that comes in loves wrestling more whenever they leave, and that is not the case at I think most programs. Wrestling is a grueling sport. It's tough. Everyone knows that, and so I think that we've created an environment where people leave loving the sport and loving trying to achieve their goals, whether they reach them or not. But usually they do.
Yeah, and I mean, Penn State coming off a season where they set the NCAA scoring record, 172.5 points, winning by 100 points, had 6 national finals, going 6 for 6 in the semis, 4 national champs. Like, most wrestling fans can rattle those stats off because it's so absurd. And it's funny, you're seeing a lot of the offseason conversation really comes back to the competitiveness in college wrestling. What will David Taylor do at Oklahoma State? You're seeing guys like Andrew Alira stay home and want to build a small program. Iowa's getting Kyle Parko and Nelson Brand's coming back for another year.
Yeah.
Does all that stuff like help the competitiveness? Like, you don't need. There's a lot of Penn State fans that just want total and utter dominance. If you ask them, they want 10 national champs and they want every other guy to just forfeit in the finals. I'm obviously exaggerating, but parity I think is great for viewership, but it is interesting that there's so much excitement right now around the competitiveness. And does that landscape of wrestling add to that excitement you have for hopping in this role now?
Sure. I mean, I'll be clear. I do want 10 national champions. And I don't necessarily want forfeits in the finals, but I think that, pins would be nice. But
Hey, that's what Nolf predicted this year. 10 pins.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I wish that had come true. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of wrestling as a sport, the competitiveness, it definitely helps. Um, and whether you're a fan of the transfer portal or not, and NIL now, it's making a difference in terms of the competitiveness. And I think we still have some time to see what that does to smaller schools and stuff. But um, yeah, the competitiveness is fun. That that's what we enjoy about the sport to start with. And so I haven't really seen it from a coaching perspective yet. It's I've only been in the role for a week, and my first week I went on vacation. So
Great start,
check
Nick.
yeah, check back with me in a few months, and then maybe I'll have a more complete answer for you. I will say I think from a coaching perspective it'll be more stressful because I always say whenever I compete I'm cool as a cucumber, like whatever. But whenever my guys compete,
Yeah.
my friends and my brothers, I'm a nervous wreck. So hopefully I can chill out a little bit.
Yeah. No, and listen, as a Penn State fan, I think everybody wants 10 national champs. I just laugh sometimes when people they want such Penn State dominance, they don't want parity. And I can appreciate that kind of fandom, but I do
Yeah,
think the competitiveness makes for a better product from a viewership standpoint.
absolutely.
What is your thoughts in I know you've only had this role for a week and you didn't have much time to even like prepare for becoming a coach. So this might be a premature question, but when you took this job, what kind of excites you the most? Like what do you think you're looking forward to the most, heading into next season now?
Man, I think I'm just looking forward to traveling with the team and, spending, moments with them that it's the moments that people don't see, right, in the locker room or maybe even after a loss, one of our athletes takes a loss or after a big win. I think those private moments are like the best. And just spending time with the guys that you are, suffering with each day in practice is awesome. So I'm just excited to spend time with them, and I already have great relationships with every guy on our team, and so just being able to live those out, I'm pumped for. So we have an awesome group of guys. I love every single one of them. So I get to spend more time with them. That's awesome for me.
Don't forget to mention how excited you are to work with Basch Solutions now too.
Heck yeah, heck yeah.
That's the first thing that I selfishly like caring for you as much as I do. And, my company works with NLWC very closely, and I was working with Jimmy Kennedy on the truck raffle. And when all this happened, I'm like, well, okay, Kennedy's out. Who's my new contact? Like, this role is the person that I deal with and help coordinate stuff. I'm like, yes, it's Nick. So I couldn't be more excited. There's nobody I think is better for this. One question that came up early when didn't come up, it was put out there that you were retiring. And I'm assuming people kind of think that because when somebody takes a college coaching job, usually in a lot of cases, they're done competing. You saw it with David and Gilman, like as soon as they did their press conference, as they said, like
Yeah.
our competitive careers are over. Where are you at competitive wise right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely not retired. I think right now my focus is on this coaching spot and being the best I can be in this position. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to compete anymore. I think that if I decide to compete, I'm going to have full support from my room and the rest of the coaching staff if I want to do that. So yeah, I think we'll see. It's not something I'm really thinking about right now. Um, I plan ahead when I need to, but with stuff like that, I don't really have to. Luckily, I won't have any problem staying in shape. I'll probably be wrestling more now than I did before, even. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I'm, figuring out. But yeah, definitely not retired. I don't think I want to be retired yet. So,
To the degree of retirement, can we talk about your hot take?
what's my hot take? Oh, about the shoes on the mat.
That you don't like people leaving their shoes on the mat.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't have, I don't have a good reason for it. I think it's, nice. Like we talked, I think it's nice when people kind of have their moment, and,
Yep.
and people can reflect on their career and um, the effect that they've had on the wrestling world. I will not be leaving my shoes on the mat. That's all I'll say. I don't know if someone comes and takes them. I still probably need those. But yeah, that is my hot take. So take it or leave it.
So when you are done, what is going to be like your signal? What is going to be your way to tell people? Like, you're just going to come out and say, like, let's just say for conversational purposes, 2028 Olympics are in the U.S. You got to wrestle through the trials. So let's say you wrestle through 2028. You wrestle at the trials, win or lose. So let's say trials with a loss, Olympics with a win, and that's your last competition. And you know it. Do you do a goodbye? Do you do a wave?
My job for the last 8 years and right now is to win stuff with Anyline Wrestling Club and Penn State Wrestling, and I don't see that ending anytime soon.
I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody DM'd me too saying about how they're like, I hate people I hate when people leave their shoes in the mat. I'm like, I love it. I love the, like, Mark Hall taking his shoes off and crying at the Olympic trials. Like, I love that moment for him, whether it's closure, whether it's the fans honoring him. I love it from a fan perspective. Like you said, you get to honor them. I think Jaden Cox having that moment at the Olympic trials was pretty cool. And you have, like, when you have these icons, like, I know David probably didn't know what he was doing next after Brooks won, but it's like, man, that would have been cool if he knew and signaled, like, hey, this is it, thank you, like, in his home crowd. That would have been cool. Yeah. Or depending on whatever Burroughs does next, like if he retires, if he competes at the trials, like whatever he does, it would be cool, like, for the fans to give them.
Well, you know who ruined it? And shout out to Frank Monero, who wrestled with me a lot whenever I was young in the Anyline Wrestling Club. But he left his shoes on the mat, and then he came back. So now it's not even retirement.
I know. So now it's like, I think I'm done.
I think, but maybe not.
Right.
So.
The doors, and I get that too. Like, I'm not putting my shoes on the mat because I don't know if I'm gonna be done. So I can respect that. All right, Nick. I think that's the most of what I had for you. You have it's late there. It's gotta be, it's not too bad. 8:00.
Yeah, it's about 8:00. So my brothers went and got some food. I'm gonna go find some fish and chips, I think, before I get back to my regular diet of beef and getting my head pulled on by Penn State wrestlers. So,
hey, are we gonna see a return of Nick Lee Cooks? It's been kind of quiet lately.
Yeah, I know. I eat pretty much the same exact thing every single day. It just has worked out that way, but we'll see. But yeah, people should go follow my cooking account, Nick Lee Cooks. I've been posting more stuff that I haven't cooked. Maybe I'll post some British food here if I can get enough pictures of it. So
I told Bo, like, Bo Bartlett is turning to be a fantastic chef, and
yeah, he still hasn't cooked for me. I don't know what the deal is with that, but.
Well, I think what we're going to do, because I invited him to come up to the house, so I think the three of us get together at my house. We'll cook some brisket. We'll smoke some stuff on the Traeger, and we'll let Bo cook for us while we smoke some meat, and then everybody wins.
Sounds like I get to eat, so I'm cool with that.
All right, Nick, go enjoy the rest of your London trip. Thank you for making time once again to come on the podcast. I am super, super excited, and I think all Penn State fans are excited for this new position. For as much hate as the internet can give, I think the internet was in unison that this was a fantastic hire. So even guys like Willie texted me saying, what an awesome slam dunk hire.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited for it. I'm excited to help, anybody that comes through our program, whether they're in it right now or, in a few years or in 10 years. Hopefully I'm still around. I'm excited to help guys achieve their goals. It's one of my favorite things to do, and we've got something special going, and I'm really grateful just to be a small part of it and a small part of the careers of each wrestler that comes through.
I love it. All right, Nicholas Boone Lee, have a great rest of your London trip. We'll talk soon, man.
See you later.
And the beat goes on.